Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm here with James Valliant, which might be surprising considering how brutally he prosecuted me only a few days ago. But
I
uh,
am so glad that I got a thorough trashing from Counselor Humphreys. I tell you, that was one of the happiest times I've ever had a difficult moment making a case.
yeah, but that was kind of a humorous mock trial. Today we are judging, at least morally, somebody who does deserve, I think, the harshest of condemnations. For many things he's done. The most recent one, less so. So Pat Robertson passed away yesterday. He is, I think, our U.S. audience probably know who he is. Maybe some of our UK and non-US audience, not so much. So that's why we have James Valliant, who lives in the US, as he mentioned to me before we went live, has had Pat Robertson in his life for the past 60 years or however long.
Oh, yeah. He
Uh,
founded in 1960 the Christian Broadcasting Network. And in 1961 to 2021, literally 60 years, spanning that much of my life, he had a very popular, highly rated television show called The 700 Club. So he became a well-known feature on American television.
yeah, and I think when I remember as a teenager living in the U.S. and Pat Robertson, I have some vague recollection of him, and it wasn't positive. But yeah, when I looked him up for and that was as a leftist kid, I think this is one of the things where most rational people who are rational on some things will still dislike this guy. When I was looking up him, basically there's a Wikipedia list of Pat Robertson controversies, and many of those are from that show, the 700 Club. And so yeah, we I don't know if we're a couple of days ago we you and Nikos did a brilliant run through the 10-minute show that Tucker Carlson did. We'll try not to be negative about or talk about negative people every day on the show, but from time
Every
to time,
day.
there will be a couple of shows within a few days.
Unfortunately, we have to do it. There are some
Yeah.
dirty jobs that must be done. I
Can
I
we
never.
start with 9/11?
Oh God, that was a great place to start. One of his most notorious episodes of the 700 Club was when he interviewed the famous Jerry Falwell, the evangelical Baptist minister who was the founder of the moral majority that Ayn Rand so denounced in the 1970s, along with Ronald Reagan's alliance with this moral majority. Well, moral majority founder Jerry Falwell, founder of Liberty University, was interviewed on the 700 Club, and they were discussing the causes of 9/11. And in the discussion, Jerry Falwell was very clear. He said that it was abortionists, pagans, I think I got the order wrong, pagans, abortionists, gays, and lesbians who he thinks played a role in making it happen. So what the cause, in effect, he was implying of this terrible tragedy on 9/11, in which thousands of people died, innocent civilians got murdered by horrific jihadist terrorist killers. It wasn't their individual responsibility at all. No, God had, and by the end of the program, I think there was even a prayer that Pat Robertson led us all in, asking God to restore his shield of protection on what he regards as a divinely protected nation, the United States of America, and that America's decadence and sin, you see, we've strayed away from biblical principles, and so America had set itself up. God's shield of protection's been lifted, and obviously pagans and gays and abortion advocates were the ones responsible for helping make that happen. When Jerry Falwell said that, Pat Robertson was very clear, I concur. Jerry Falwell was compelled later to apologize. I don't believe there was ever an apology from Pat Robertson for concurring. So he definitely believes that God plays an active role. He's not one of these deists who thinks God is a disinterested thing, who sort of lets humans govern their own affairs. No, God is in control of each and every little thing. Um, and you can name lots and lots of examples of this through the course of history. He really does believe that God is responsible here for so many different things. If an earthquake happens in Haiti, for example, in 2010, it was a horrible, horrible earthquake with huge casualties. But you know, they're famous for voodoo and so forth. And so he believed it was because the Haitian people had a pact with the devil that was responsible for the horrific earthquake in Haiti that struck 13 years ago. Hurricane Katrina, when it struck in 2005, it was one of the most devastating hurricanes to hit North America in recent decades. And of course, we all know that was the result of America's liberal abortion policy at the time. America, of course, was still under Roe versus Wade. He argued consistently on his show that life begins at the moment of conception, the moment of conception, so that any interference with pregnancy, even from the second that becomes a zygote, is murder and a sin. And he stressed that. And for that sin, Razi, we're going to have things like, you know, Hurricane Katrina happening. Now, he wasn't one of these ecumenical pro-religion across the board types who thinks all religions are kind of good and on the right track. He was very sectarian in some regards. He wasn't shy about calling Islam a demonic religion or Hinduism a demonic religion. He was very, very keen about, and he loved that word demonic, by the way. Those religions were just Satan as far as he's concerned, just like I guess the voodoo of the Haitians is satanic. Now, he's got the truth. And if you don't hew to the truth, you should expect trouble. And I mean big, bad, bloody trouble.
That maybe we should, I don't know if we should, but let's do it anyway. Let's read that statement. Again, this is Jerry Falwell, another character on that level. And this was on Pat Robertson's show, and Pat Robertson said that he concurred with this. So this was after 9/11. He says, the abortionists have got to bear some burden for this because God will not be mocked. And when we destroy 40 million little innocent babies, we make God mad. I really believe that the pagans and the abortionists and the feminists and the gays and the lesbians who are actively trying to make that an alternative lifestyle, the ACLU, People for the American Way, all of them have tried to secularize America. I point the finger in their face and say, you helped this happen. Now, I mean, this is...
He makes very plain that he believes that it's gays and abortionists who led us down this decadent path and helped make this happen.
And it shows something about, like, when you take religion seriously, you know, and I separate, although it's evil in both cases, but I separate when he makes these statements about like a hurricane, and he makes this statement about something like 9/11, which is, you know, people chose to do that. That was the act of people, oddly enough, the act of people who really, you know, took religion seriously. And yet he, you know, actively blames other people who were not there for doing something that, you know, his that is not in line with his understanding of his religion, which
you know, Jerry, I just have to say that Pat Robertson has, in the beginning of his career, he was converted by a a clergyman who impressed upon him a certain section of the Bible. I think this is very explanatory of Pat Robertson. He said that his, quote, guiding principle, and this is what he called his guiding principle, his philosophy of life, it comes from the Bible, of course, comes from the Hebrew Tanakh, Proverbs 3, 5 through 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. Lean not on your own understanding. In all ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. And Pat Robertson said that made a deep impression on him and was his guiding principle, his philosophy of life. So he really turned his head over to God and his entire judgment of God. If you were to ask him about the problem of evil, the famous Greek philosopher Epicurus said either God is all powerful and all knowing, or he's pretty vicious and not very benevolent. You can't have both a benevolent and an all-powerful God. If you were to ask him if he had a answer to the problem of evil, as Epicurus and the Greeks developed it, he wouldn't have an intelligent answer to that. we have to he doesn't lean on his own judgment, as Proverbs tells us not to lean on our own minds too heavily. He trusts the Bible when it says, turn your mind over to God, and he's in charge of everything. If we can't figure it out, so much the worse for us. We shouldn't expect to try and make sense out of all this. But God is intervening and God is responsible, and our sin will result in our punishment. So you have to wonder, these children who get childhood diseases like cancer, is God punishing these little children for some reason? It comes to some pretty horrific consequences, but he really believes this. Now, I was never a big fan of Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon, as you can probably guess. But the point is that when Ariel Sharon got sick, he actually said that the Israeli Prime Minister's illness that forced him to leave politics was God's doing, saying, "Woe unto any Israeli leader, mind you, who should divide God's land." So he actually implied that Ariel Sharon's illness was part of God's plan to protect Israel staying intact. He really believes God intervenes, will make the appropriate person sick or the appropriate event occur in order to send a message to punish people to get his plan achieved. God is responsible for the state of the world as far as Pat Robertson was concerned.
Yeah, by the way, I was not a fan of Ariel Sharon as prime minister either, although 6 weeks after my 18th birthday, my first ever vote was for Ariel Sharon to become prime minister. There was one alternative, and I still think, looking back, it was the lesser of two evils. But if anything bad happens to me, you know why. We have a super chat from Robert. Thank you, Robert. He says, God watches the Daily Objective well, as much as he watches anything, and he sends a Robert Naser emoji, which is available to our YouTube members. Thanks for having this conversation and tackling this topic. Thank you, Robert. Thank you also to the person in the chat who bought an ARCUK regular membership during this show. If Pat Robertson is right, you are going to hell over that, but it'll be worth it.
Right. Every abortion is a murder. Every act of premarital sex or homosexual activity is sin. And you're hurting not just yourself, but you're endangering your nation. You're endangering your nation if you get an abortion. Even the minute you find out if you're pregnant, you're endangering the nation if you engage in premarital sex. I'm sorry, it's this pagan decadence that's caused and all these liberal laws about homosexuality. He really, really did believe that whatever the West is suffering is the direct result of God's punishment for their sin. He's an old-fashioned fundamentalist. God's in control. We're sinners in the hands of an angry God, and we better watch it. Like woe betide any leader of Israel who should divide God's land. If you do something that God doesn't want, you really should expect punishment. And if that punishment doesn't occur, well, it's part of God's greater plan that we don't understand. And if we don't understand, so much the worse for us, because we're not, quote, leaning on our own judgment, as Proverbs enjoins us to do. We're turning our minds over to God. Hashem knows what he's doing, and we should just let things happen. But if bad things happen to us, good people, bad things happen to people, we must have done something wrong. Think of all the unearned guilt that he's causing. Think of all the ridiculous stress and trauma he's causing in children. To think, well, geez, I got sick. What did I do wrong? Or mommy got into a traffic accident. What did we do wrong? I mean, all this unearned guilt that creates this whole psychological motive to terrorize people into doing what he thinks are the politically correct things. And as I say on question, I can remember decades, he was opposed to gay marriage forever. He was opposed to a legal abortion, as I say, forever. He wanted an amendment to the Constitution to allow school prayer in government-run schools in the United States when the Supreme Court said that you can't have that under the Establishment Clause. No, he was a force for medieval mysticism in the modern world. I'm not saying that he did anything wrong. He was a wealthy man, wealthy enough Now, mind you, he did not come from wealth, but he obviously gathered enough millions of dollars during the course of his televangelism to breed thoroughbred horses. I'm not sure, there are many accusations of financial impropriety. None of them, to my satisfaction, were really proved, but there's no doubt he made millions of dollars through his Christian broadcasting network and what he did.
Yeah, but did he not earn that money from healing people?
He would pray. And that's the thing. Coming back around to his, God is an active intervener. When people would send in prayer requests, he would pray for their health, for their, if they had applied for a job, if the kid was in trouble and they needed something to work out, they were going through a tricky divorce, he would pray to God to make it all work out. And he was convinced that if you prayed properly, if our prayer, now think about that. What about the poor guy who's praying and he doesn't get the miraculous cure or the good thing? Did God punish him? How about the poor innocent child who could possibly not have done anything to irritate God? Did he sin so that this poor child gets some horrible disease and suffers and dies? That's the mentality. That is really the sort of medieval religious mentality that Pat Robertson brought to the modern world.
I guess this is this is what the episode is. So I'm thinking, should we go through anything else he has said? Anything you
Well,
I
think I covered the things that most struck in my memory in the last 2 or 3 decades. I mean, 9/11, Hurricane Katrina, the earthquake in Haiti, the illness of Ariel Sharon. It's all God's intervention in this world. If you don't like the state of the world, it's because it's one of two things. It's all part of God's plan that we can't really understand because we don't, quote, lean on our own understanding, as Proverbs enjoins us not to do. So we're not to understand if good things happen to bad people. But the truth is, it's probably a punishment from God. If we've been sinning, we should expect woe unto any Israeli leader, for example, or it's God lifting his protection from America, the divine protection that must explain America's success. You see, America's success is not explicable except in terms of God's special protection. You see, and it's our sins that risk us getting punishments here on earth. That's the kind of guy he was.
So we did decide on this topic late, and as I mentioned, my preparation here is limited. But this is from Wikipedia, so take it as you will take anything from Wikipedia. But it in the list of controversies, it says 2007 terror attack. On the January 2nd, 2007 broadcast of the 700 Club, Robertson said that God spoke to him and told him that, quote, mass killings were to come during 2007 due to a terrorist attack on the United States. He added, quote, the Lord didn't say nuclear, but I do believe it will be something like that. When a terrorist attack failed to happen in 2007, Robertson said in January 2008, all I can think is that somehow the people of God prayed and God in his mercy spared us. So
the power of prayer did it, Razi. If good people hadn't prayed, who knows what would have happened? The divine forces would have caused this punishment. So we better be on our knees and praying constantly to avoid this trouble, because if we don't, it's going to happen. He believes, and he stated repeatedly on his program, the 700 Club, he's an apocalyptic. He definitely believes in an end of times and a judgment at the end of times, like Christians and the book of Daniel suggests. There'll be this great apocalyptic end of the world. And he believes Armageddon won't happen in Megiddo. It'll happen around Jerusalem. And it's going to be a battle. It's going to focus between Islam and Jews and Christians over control of Israel. And that will be the apocalyptic end of the world, Razi, when the forces of good and the forces of evil finally line up. Islam and Christian America will have their final battle. That's when Jesus, the Messiah, will finally come and bring an end to all this nonsense we call the world. So he's fully expecting a total apocalypse, probably a nuclear apocalypse, to be stimulated over control over Israel. And he's stated this repeatedly. He absolutely believes that the Al-Aqsa Mosque, Dome of the Rock, should be removed and the original Jewish temple should be constructed for a third time, and that will be the final sign. And that's the last thing God is waiting for to happen, so that the final battle, Armageddon, will happen. Not up in Megiddo, but down in Jerusalem, when those evil Islam people are out against Christians and Messianic Jews. Will be fighting the good battle against Islam, and that'll bring about the final cataclysmic end of the world, don't you know?
I don't get it. Why is Judaism okay?
Well, Judaism isn't perfectly okay. He has, in fact, made several comments about how certain Jewish groups, obviously, well, he has never, to my knowledge, made the comment that, well, you know, the Jews killed Jesus. After all, I mean, within our life, I think Christian guilt, quite some of it quite well earned after the Holocaust, caused them to pull back on that stuff. But still, Judaism is not, no. There's a cabal. I've heard him say that part of the conspiracy of the world is sort of like a Jewish conspiracy behind the scenes. He's sort of given, long before Kanye West and Fuentes, he sort of gave that there's a Jewish conspiracy in the American media and behind the scenes to control things. And those are part of the bad guys. So no, Jews aren't perfect. Don't get me wrong. They are God's chosen people, and they have a plan, obviously, in God's ultimate plan about Armageddon. But Armageddon and will happen in the Holy Land, and it will be all about Jerusalem and the temple, don't you know? So he's one of these prophetic, apocalyptic messianics who really believes that an Armageddon and a final battle and an end of the world is going to come. We're heading for it. There's nothing much we can do about it. So just prepare, make straight your paths for the Lord, because the end is nigh, and it could be nuclear. And it'll be all about possession of Jerusalem between the good guys and the bad guys. That's how he sees it. Now, in that sense, he was a supporter of Israel, like many evangelical Christians and conservative Christians are. One of the modest and sort of footnote redeeming features of it, because it's fundamentally an evil philosophy, but definitely one of the better features of it is they are strong supporters of Israel. In certain senses, they may not like, if you were to ask them privately and put them under lie detectors, do you have positive feelings about Jews? I think you'd get a lot of them to be very anti-Semitic, because obviously Jews have rejected. Okay, we don't say out loud they killed Jesus anymore, but obviously they reject Jesus as the true Christ and God. So Jews are, they're not perfect, and they, not like I'm advocating Judaism here. Pat Robertson, I'm sure if you put him under a lie detector, would say. Yeah, it's the good guys, the Christians and the Messianic Jews versus the Muslims and their satanic, demonic religion that will cause the end of the world. And don't be surprised if it's a total nuclear apocalypse.
Yeah, I see in the chat, Christopher, saying don't take these clips out of context. Yeah, we there's enough we say here that could end up in an edited version on the next.
For gosh sakes, I am quoting
Tucker Carlson's show.
Yes, don't
yeah.
take any
Also, by the way,
quotes or real quotes. That's me.
Yeah. When I'm asking questions, I am playing Pat Robertson's advocate, as the saying.
Right. Neither of us are actually believing this if we're recapitulating his position.
Yeah, I was thinking, on Monday we said we will have, for members at the platinum level and above, we'll have these mock trials once a month. And as we're talking, I'm thinking we could do something about Pat Robertson, but then I'm thinking actually that would mean my friend Matthew would actually have to defend Pat Robertson, and I don't know if I want to.
Well, see, it was pretty unfair to ask me to prosecute such a virtuous man as you. So I suppose fair is fair. No, but we should aim for the trials to be, a little more, evidentiary and substantive than, say, that first one, although it was fun, I must say.
Yeah. And it will be fun when we start doing it seriously. I mean, more details will, will come soon, and I think the first one is in just 2 weeks or so. So that's gonna be fun. Members will get to be the jury. So yeah, we're not gonna give you an easy time with people like Pat Robertson, but that's gonna be a lot of fun. You can become a member if you sign up. There's a link in the description and in the live chat, and yeah, you can become a member. By the way, if you become a member at a cheaper level, there is still a lot of value there. A big part of which is the Sunday sessions with James Valliant on Peikoff's courses. As right now, the course is History of Philosophy, and with the membership, you also get access to past sessions, over 2 years of that, over 2 years of our book club. So it's definitely worth it. And yeah, as I mentioned, if Pat Robertson is right, then that's not going to bode well for you in the future. But if he's wrong, then which I would say he is, then it will, and it will help us make the future more rational and less Pat Robertson like.
Yes, sir. No, if you seriously, on a very serious note, Razi is doing some of the most important work in the world. Ayn Rand Center UK is creating uh, a platform that has more substantive content than anything else in the objectivist world. More content as such, but from people, I mean, really high-end people. We've had Ed Locke on. Harry Binswanger is a regular feature here. We have Lisa Van Dam and Shoshana Milgram leading sometimes the discussion on the Fountainhead. There's so much exciting stuff here, and Razi is planning to do so much more, including the trials with me and Mr. Humphreys over hopefully more substantive and real issues in the future. Please do consider becoming a subscriber, a member, join, hit like, share, make comments, but definitely hit that join button too, and join at some level, please. And the higher the level, the more the perks you'll get. But I think that what we're doing here at the Ayn Rand Center UK is important. And if you agree, please, it's a value for value. Do consider becoming a member at whatever level you can afford of the Ayn Rand.
And liking and sharing, as you mentioned, that if you can't afford to become a member, but even if you can, that's always helpful. We're not quite getting the kind of views that Pat Robertson used to get on the show. Yeah, for us to have an impact, we do need to reach a wider audience.
But our viewership is growing. Just the one I did yesterday or 2 days ago with Nikos has over 1,000 views. Within I think 2 days, it got more than 1,000 views, a single one.
So it has more than 1,000 views, and it has a lot of angry comments, which means we are reaching a non-objectivist audience with some of our content. And by the way, for every person who posts an angry comment, there is somebody who might disagree, but think, okay, there's interesting enough points here that I might watch another episode, and then maybe another one, and then maybe I'll subscribe, and then eventually maybe they'll read Rand, and who knows where it'll go from there.
So we are growing, and help us grow. And really, I believe one day we will become a cultural force. So please help us make that happen if you can. I think it's in your interest, as I know it's in mine. So
yeah, this has been, I think, a great show. About a third of it was the sales pitch at the end, but we are capitalists, so
but I think we are doing good work too. So
yeah. And many in our audience are supporters, including big supporters, so we appreciate it. And yeah, next week we have another exciting week. We know some of the topics. We will have an episode of the Fixing Education series next week. We will also have an interesting episode similar to the one this past Wednesday that James and Nikos did. We will be going through a video, an older one, but a more relevant one, directly relevant to Rand's ideas. And of course, we'll have the Thursday Collective. It's still a weekly show for the next 6 weeks, 5.5 weeks. Yeah, I hope you'll join us for that. And thank you, everybody. Thank you, James. We'll see you next week.
Take care.